What's the fastest you've seen a couple go from married to divorced, and what caused it? The husband had an unsolicited outburst at a family dinner. I know you guys know I do and you need to back off about it. Wife didn't know, her dad didn't know, nobody knew. I mean, that sounds like something someone who does would say. Some friends, who had been dating for a few months, got married in Las Vegas as sort of a drunken joke. The girl found out she would lose a lot of her trust fund because of being married. A gaggle of 4 lawyers were flown in and got a very quick retroactive annulment. Marriage lasted 4 days, except legally it was declared to have never existed at all. They dated for 3 more years then broke up. Not sure how long it took the divorce to actually happen, but I went to a wedding where the bride didn't go home with the groom afterwards. There wasn't any cheating. She just decided she didn't want to be a military wife. They were together before he enlisted, so I think part of it was that she wasn't ready to move away from her family. It just sucked that she waited until that day to tell anyone. Next door neighbor got married. Less than 2 months later she moved out, said he was abusive and a drunk. A couple of weeks later he shot and killed their neighbor through the front door after an escalating feud involving the neighbor's dog getting shot with a bow and arrow. My cousin and her first husband got divorced after about a month because one of them lived in Houston and the other in Dallas, and they never really agreed how they were going to deal with that. I'm sure there were other things too, but that was the official story. That seems like one of the biggest things that should be figured out before getting married. I went to a wedding where the bride got drunk and the groom picked up her phone and saw that she was sexting a co-worker during the entire wedding. He told the officiant to not file the paperwork. Great reception though. Guy saved himself a bunch of money on the divorce. Years and years ago, my uncle's girlfriend planned a wedding and invited everyone and didn't tell him until the week of. I don't know the whole story about why she did it, but he went through with it and quietly got it annulled and broke up with her. My friend married this woman after years of dating. They were together about 6 months. Then on their first Christmas, he got her a present and she got him nothing. Later that night she left their house and didn't come back until the next morning. Apparently she had made an account on some dating site on Christmas, met a guy, and slept with him that night. She came clean the next day, but that was the end of their 6-month marriage. It sounds like there might have been something else leading up to that Christmas. A relative of mine had a marriage last less than 3 weeks. They had been together for a couple years and even went to premarital counseling at their church for a few months to get ready. Their wedding was super lavish and it was clear a lot of prep and money went into it. At their wedding they announced they were expecting their first child. Everything seemed great. Unfortunately the whole thing blew up when the wife discovered he had been cheating on her for almost their entire relationship with multiple women. She found this out while in a foreign country on their honeymoon. 4 months pregnant. I know from her mom that she had complications in her pregnancy that they attribute to the stress of all of this. My wife's family's neighbor's daughter got married and threw a huge wedding day bash, like spent 50-70 grand. Then not even 2 weeks later got divorced. She had been cheating on her husband throughout the engagement but still wanted her special day. I heard later on that she had asked her mom if she had to live with her husband after they got married. Oof at that last part. My dad and his second wife made it like not even 4 months before she left and I never saw or heard from her again. She said she was going to give me an old Nintendo 64. She never did. That be. I have a friend who proposed to his girlfriend like a week after he caught her cheating on him. He thought it would bring them closer and fix their relationship. Needless to say, he drove by his house on lunch a few months later and saw her co-worker's truck in the driveway. She's getting dicked down in his house and he just drives right by. They are currently getting divorced after barely a year of marriage. They got married in the October. She left him just after Christmas the same year. She was bored. I don't know what he expected really. She'd cheated on him when they were engaged too and he'd forgiven her. Had a bit of a tip-off when we didn't see the bride at the reception. She was next door in the carriage house restroom sobbing. She had just found out, on her wedding day, that her groom had once been engaged to one of her bridesmaids. The groom was not cheating on her, but just never got around to telling her that he and one of their mutual friends had once been an item. The groom spent the reception at the bar. The restaurant staff served the meal, but there was no cake cutting, bridal dance, etc. Yeah, that had to have been a weird wedding to go to. When I worked at a college, couple marries because she is pregnant, wants a baby in wedlock, divorce, annulled I think, actually, when baby was born the wrong color 3 months later. My cousin was married and then 3 months later he had a brain aneurysm and survived. His new wife divorced him soon after, saying she wasn't prepared for that. He's now married to someone much nicer and 20 times more attractive. I almost downvoted you because I was so mad at his first wife. My neighbor got married at 19 and divorced when she was 20. Her parents got divorced while she was dating the guy and she moved in with him a couple months into the relationship. Together less than a year before they got married. Super young couple together for such a short time almost never works out. She didn't learn her lesson though because she got engaged to someone else barely a year later. They called it off and broke up before getting married though. Sadly that's the happy story of the family because her younger sister got pregnant at 16 to a guy in his 30s and then a couple years later got pregnant by him again and married him. He's currently in prison for statutory rape of a 13-year-old. Happened while they were together, but they're still married with 2 children and she defends him on Facebook all the time. One of my friends from college filed for divorce 10 months after her wedding. They were never really a good match and everyone could see it. Honestly, I think she just wanted to have a wedding and be a princess for a day. Once she realized she actually had to keep the guy, she started having second thoughts. People are so weird. Girl I went to HS with has 4 kids from her first marriage. They divorced when they were in their early 40s. She decides she wants to get married again. She wants a religious family man and is convinced Nigeria is the route to go. She starts chatting up Nigerian guys on Facebook, goes over there, marries a guy she just met via her Facebook husband search. After a few months of her sending money to him after she's home, she's unable to 1 month because she has 4 kids to worry about. He freaks out and they wind up getting it annulled. But wait, there's more. A year later, she's on her way to Nigeria again because she's found another guy to marry. This time she goes over there once to visit, comes home, then basically is, I am not giving you money until we marry. She goes back over again within 6 months to marry him. A month after getting home she finds out she's pregnant. All is well. Eventually she's unable to send money because 4 kids with twins on the way and that comes first. He gets upset and they wind up divorced. She later finds out he'd been chatting up other women around the world and getting money from them, and was only going to use her for a green card to get to the States. I honestly don't feel bad for her. I feel bad for her 6 kids to have to witness their mom make stupid decisions. No idea how the heck she afforded all those plane tickets. She's given up on Nigeria now. Jamaica's on her sights now. So, I am pretty sure before long, we'll see a shotgun wedding in Jamaica. Whoa, all that money could have been used for the therapy this woman desperately needs. He started using M again after years of recovery. They were married for less than a year. Kinda sad really. He's in rehab now. I don't know how long it took for them to actually get divorced, but my uncle found out his new wife had been cheating on him right as they left on their honeymoon cruise. His second wife was also a short marriage where she was cheating on him. He's been happily married to his third wife for 5 years or so now, so that's good at least. A friend of mine worked for her husband's brother. It's how they met. Once they got married her boss stopped paying her because she was family now and you don't have to pay family. So she quit and found another job immediately without consulting her husband, and in a fury her husband changed all the locks while she was asleep in the back bedroom and put deadbolts on the outside of the door. So she could only leave their house if he let her out, and took her cell phone. They didn't have a landline. It took her about 2 hours to get a hold of us online. Dumbass didn't think she could contact people with a laptop. So we called the police who busted down the door and got her out. Husband went to prison. Her divorce went through real quick. And now, 5 years later, she lives on the coast and got engaged again to a very sweet guy who knows we're all watching like hawks. The last sentence was so sweet. Friends as hawks. 1 week, a couple of friends seemed happily married. Next thing I know, the wife has shared a pic of herself on the beach in a wedding dress being lofted by some goth looking long haired dude. Her new groom. No idea. Relative of mine got married and divorced 6 months later. Turns out they had never seriously discussed whether or not they wanted children prior to getting married. One adamantly wanted children and the other didn't, and it drove them apart. They were together for 3 or 4 years before getting married and somehow never figured this out. I think that's one of the first things my boyfriend and I talked about when we were discussing how serious a relationship we were going to have. My little sister got married to the love of her life at 17. 2 months later she ran away and filed for divorce. BC her 22-year-old husband became an abusive drunk as soon as their marriage license was signed. Wedding photographer here. Over 5 years, I know of 3 couples that are no longer together. One couple married in September, divorced by February. One couple had been high school sweethearts, waited 10 years to get married, and the marriage from what I can see lasted less than a year. The other couple, the groom was drunk for the whole wedding, felt up his mother, and they used to post their photos all over FB and IG. Now they're no longer to be seen, and the status of married is gone. My boyfriend's cousin. She's 21 dating a 19-year-old who looks 12 and is tiny. She's a very large woman. She's extremely physically abusive. I watched her pick this man up and lock him in the trunk of a car by sitting on top of it to induce a panic attack and win their argument at work. He always has bruises and black eyes. He proposes to her after a few months of dating. They get married. He annuls the marriage and leaves in secret the next day. Goes into hiding for 6 months. She posts lots of woe is me sappy breakup stuff. Somehow out of nowhere he is just back. They remarry at the courthouse and now she's saying she's pregnant but not telling her family. Her husband looks miserable and according to the grapevine doesn't work anymore and is confined to the apartment they share. Whether that's by choice or not is up for debate. The poor guy looks like a withered husk of himself and he's only 19. Someone needs to report her. If he's being abused he might not have the wherewithal to come forward and talk about it. He also might be in constant physical danger being at home. You should really talk to your boyfriend about intervening somehow. My uncle had married someone 3 months after dating them. He had 2 dachshunds and 2 cats. She demanded that he got rid of the dogs and got 2 new ones of her choice. They divorced in 2 weeks. Did he keep his animals? Well, it wasn't really a divorce. My brother married his girlfriend in Japan, Cinderella wedding at Disneyland and everything. Turns out she decided she was going to stay in Japan, despite them planning to move to Canada with him. Later he found out she never submitted the paperwork, so they were never married. Friend of mine was divorced and remarried in the same month. We all thought it was a little quick, but turns out they had been hot for each other for years. Anyway, a couple months after she got married, I saw her Facebook status changed to separated. Don't know if they're still married or not. About 30 minutes. Bride told the groom in the run-up to the wedding, "Do not smash the cake in my face. Do not." His buddies all got on him about being a P and showing her who's really in charge of this marriage. I was at the wedding. He smashed the cake in her face. She walked out of the reception and had it annulled. I mean, if he can be that easily pressured by his friends, then it seems like she dodged a bullet there. Young couple in their late 20s. Bride was the daughter of a friend. Daughter never learned to budget, save, spend wisely, pay bills on time, prioritize. They both worked full-time at good jobs in San Francisco and lived in Pacific Heights in a purchased condo that was quite nice. She took them both into a ton of debt. Had to have the very latest of everything that was material in nature, clothing, furniture, etc. She would put $1,000 on their credit card in an hour on absolutely nothing. She nagged her husband from the moment he walked in the door from work, even in front of company. It lasted 2 years. He couldn't get away fast enough. Her wedding photos were hilarious. No smiles. Finances is one of the most important thing to be on the same page before getting married. 2 weeks. Kind of a long story. My sister was married to a real jackass. She stayed too long and the divorce has been bitter. The ex-husband is convinced my sister has a secret trust fund she is living off of and he wants half. There is no such trust fund. I mean, in what hopefully will be many years when my dad dies, there may be money from his trust, but he's very much alive, so he's not entitled to that. So my sister hooked up with another guy who apparently is friends with the ex. The ex told him about the trust fund and somehow convinced my gullible sister to marry him, in the hopes that he would be more successful in getting the trust fund, the one that doesn't exist. This new husband, within days of marrying my sister, brought his ex-girlfriend, baby mama, who was supposedly in an abusive relationship, and his child to stay with them. Very shortly after, it was learned that new hubby has been with baby mama the entire duration of the relationship, and the guy only went out with her because he thought she was a trust fund kid. So within a couple of weeks after the nuptials, they were at each other's throats and he had thrown out and actually arrested and basically kept all her belongings. He filed a restraining order against, so she couldn't come to the house. I'm not saying my sister deserved this, but she does have a habit of stretching the truth. These guys didn't get the idea there was a trust fund from their asses. This marriage only basically lasted 2 weeks. It is very tragic, but dad was driving 2 of his boys home from a camping trip, and they got into an accident and the car went into the lake. Dad was able to rescue the oldest boy, but he could not get the youngest out of his car seat in time. They were able to get the little one breathing, but he had no brain activity and they had to pull the plug. The marriage ended pretty much immediately. Child loss will either drive 2 people apart or bring them closer through the trauma. It is one of the hardest things I think a relationship can go through, and I'm grateful that it was the latter for my husband and I. When I was in the army, my ex-wife and I were good friends with a couple that lived a few doors down from us. One day I get home from work, and he's sitting on his front doorstep. I said, "Hey," he said, "Dude, you gotta come see this." So I walked into his house, and it's empty. Completely. Not a scrap of paper, not a bag of trash. The weird thing was every cabinet door was open, refrigerator door open, every drawer open. If it was supposed to be closed, it was open. He said the front door was wide open when he got home, and every faucet was turned on too. No note, nothing. His wife was just gone with everything in the house. The thing was, my ex-wife and I had dinner with them, in their house, the night before, laughing it up, drinking wine, having a great time, no sign of a thing wrong. He said the first thing he did was call her parents' house, and her father answered the phone, before he could even ask if he knew what was going on. The father said, "Bill, you need to let it go," and hung up. Remember that line from True Lies when Tom Arnold says his ex-wife even took the ice cube trays? Well, she took the ice cube trays. Also took all of his uniforms and other clothes. He literally had the clothes on his back and what was in his pockets to his name. I never did find out what the motivator was. She was just gone. My own marriage in 2004. Kissed my wife goodbye for a 3-month deployment to Pakistan in March. I never saw her again. After 2 months of being there, she told me she wanted to leave me. At the time, there was a loophole in divorce law. One website was exploding, quicksimpledivorce.com. Lawyers in Guam were allowed to process uncontested divorces pretty quickly. Paid $800 and sent her the paperwork. We were living in Germany at the time and she signed and left for the US before I got home. The divorce was finalized in August of 2004. What caused it? Dunno really. Honestly, she was unhappy prior to my departure. We had only been married a couple years. We kinda rushed to get married in 2002 when I got orders to Germany. Worked at a wedding venue and the bride told the groom, who was from Arkansas, that there was to be no call of the hogs during the wedding speech. Groomsman proceeds to do it anyway, and the bride was furious and went into the back with the bridal party. Dude slapped her and said, "This crap is getting annulled tomorrow." Honestly, she might have not dodged the slap, but she dodged a bullet. One of my classmates in HS married her boyfriend before graduating college. She was one of those girls that had her entire life planned, so we were a little surprised that she didn't wait to graduate, but he was just about perfect, so it made sense. He was intelligent, motivated, sweet, etc. He would come over to her house on weekends and mow her grass, do little repair jobs, take out the trash. Perfect courtship. Beautiful proposal. A wedding that everyone talked about for weeks. 6 months later we go out for a girls' night and we beg for details on her wedded bliss. Seeing as she's the first one married and she breaks down. He had just stopped. Everything he had done before marriage just disappeared. It was like he was done adulting and reverted back to childhood. Wouldn't eat anything but spaghetti and chicken nuggets. Literally. Started skipping class. Cut his hours at work to less than half. Didn't do any housework, any yard work. Would spend the entire night up with his best friend playing video games. To the point the friend complained. Drama intensified, and they were divorced before they hit their 1-year anniversary. The actual divorce has to wait because of visa issues, but basically they got married. Everything was fine, and then about a month later she got weirdly quiet about their relationships, and about 9 months after the wedding he told her he thinks of her like a sister. Holiday romance, long distance for several years, a fuck ton of red flags, and the second they moved in together things went to heck. Basically he didn't do crap around the home. She earned all the money and paid for all of his stuff on top of it. He then squandered her money even when she asked him not to. She actually had to put a limit on his phone contract. I don't think he planned to leech on her. He's just an inconsiderate butthole. They're waiting it out because she's too nice to send him back. Basically 90 Day Fiancé on TLC. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.